Why, hello, everybody. This is Eric Vierthaler of Vierthaler Studios back again with my co host, Ty of Junebug Films. We're here for the next episode of Sit Down by the Fire. We're here with our next special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Brian Lynas. I am the independent owner freelancer at Lynas Animation.
But yeah, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And we also want to thank you for taking time out of your and yeah, we want to thank you for taking time out of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So, um, what got you into animation?
Probably childhood cartoons. When I grew up watching up, or when I grew up watching them, uh, yeah, I thought they were cool and I liked them. And I was particularly inspired by some of the Disney animation, and how well it was done. And then
Mm.
when my brothers taught me how to make flip books, I realized that people could actually get paid to make the things that I saw on the TV and on the big screen. And so liked drawing, and I got into, I always try to improve my drawing, and then just kind of aimed myself towards that as a career.
Nice, nice. And so yeah, and so you were saying that there were some Disney cartoons that inspired you. So would you say that it was one Disney cartoon, or was it one Disney animated movie that inspired you, or was it multiple ones?
Well, I think I started to notice just like the quality, and that there were just like different levels of quality. Um, whenever I think it was maybe Bambi, possibly it was just some small little move or gesture, but I can't remember anything specific. Um, and then I just started to notice from there and kind of keep an eye out on all the the Disney animation from then on and I noticed uh, you know more and more just different moves and how realistic they felt and believable and all that. But I was also a very big fan of the Saturday morning cartoons, and actually they when I was a kid, they started airing cartoons like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Voltron and Transformers and stuff like that through the weekdays, early in the morning. So I was really into those too, just like for the content.
Right.
And their drawings, their individual drawings were pretty cool, and their animation was cool. It was just, you know, usually a lower frame rate, a little bit more anime than animation. But I always liked the content of those, and so I learned how to draw, and I draw those type of things over and over, not so much the Disney stuff.
See,
Right.
he did a that leads to the commercial that he did. He did for he's a local Kansas City artist. For those who don't know, he did a really cool animation where he made the bulldozer look like a transformer. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
um,
that was yeah. Go ahead. Uh,
that must have been fun. So you because I know you do some animations for the Kansas City Chiefs. So
oh, it's I don't know that I have done anything necessarily for
I
the
thought that.
Kansas.
Well, I thought that.
I,
Okay,
that's
man,
okay.
look at me
Uh,
doing looking professional. um,
That's
but
okay. I have done work for Price Chopper, which is a local grocery store chain in the Kansas City area. They have a couple of mascots uh, for their grocery store. The grocery store is called Price Chopper. The mascots are called Price Chompers, and they're these little furry little monsters that have really big teeth, and they go around chomping prices. So that's kind of my claim to fame, if you will. But
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
the 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 excavator, animation of the construction equipment that transforms. That was for that was really fun to work on. That was when I was still working at a studio, and I was part of a team, and I got to just focus on the way that it moved, the way that I broke it apart to make all the animation. And of all the animations I've done, that one has the most hours per second, I guess, if there was a ratio to where I could put so much time into just 1 second, each second of animation. I did the math and I was like, I think it was around 13 hours.
Wow,
Maybe
that's a long time.
Yeah.
I take that back. I'm not sure if it's 13 or 3, but still, for just 1 second of animation, it was like 3.5 hours or something like that. And,
Well,
I did research on what the major Hollywood movies, what they do, and they do spend like 13 hours into put like 13 hours into 1 second of animation. And so I was like, well, we're getting there.
yeah. Speaking of that, do you? What are some? What are some other? I guess where what advice would you give someone maybe who doesn't want to move to LA or New York or someone who wants to get involved in the Kansas City area? How would you, or even
Well,
local areas to animate? What advice would you give them?
uh, well, good luck. No, I did work at a studio and it closed down about 7 years ago,
Oh,
seven
I'm
and a half
sorry.
years ago. No, that's okay. I took a break from it because I was there for 17 years, and so uh, now I occasionally get freelance work doing animation, and so uh, I think anymore, it's definitely more possible to stay where you are and work remotely, with the internet and all that.
Yep.
It probably just depends on the company that you're trying to work for or the clients that you're trying to seek, whether they're okay with that. And I think anymore it's okay, uh, to do that. Last year I was able to work with a company that was based I think they were in the LA area, doing some video game animation, uh, and just able to do meetings online, do Zoom meetings or whatever,
Mhm.
and uh, email, FTP or share the files with
So
them online and do reviews and the whole process. So yeah, I mean anymore it's more possible. Just I think ultimately what it comes down to is if you have the skills that clients want, then that raises your chances of being able to do it.
would would you ever? You're doing commercials for now. Would you ever want to do a feature?
Yeah, I've always wanted to do a feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You. I don't know. You got any good animated films ideas or?
Uh, I have a character that I started to develop when I was in college. It's just an ant character, Anthony Ant. It's kind of like a play off of Mickey Mouse. I was like,
Right.
my thought was, if Mickey Mouse is such a small creature, but he's that much more popular, I'm going to go even smaller. So,
Yeah.
so
That's
I
There you
came up
go.
with this. So my student film when I was in college was, about Anthony Ant. He dies and he's in heaven, and uh, he he's bored, 'cause, there's not a lot going on up there, and it's just like a short animation about his coming back to life, coming back to Earth, and that's actually on my website if anybody wants to see it, lynasanimation.com.
righty.
Um.
Yeah,
Did
and oh, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead, Eric.
But yeah, I'm so sorry. I totally didn't mean to cut you off there. But yeah, but I was gonna say that that after this, uh, we definitely certainly can leave a link like for people to go check out your website and yeah and go check out all of your previous stuff but yeah
Yeah.
and, but yeah and one of the things that I heard ironic that you mentioned about Mickey Mouse. One of the things
Hmm.
that I heard is that one day like that Walt like he just decided that he was just gonna scribble like just on a piece of paper, and then ultimately it was then when he thought of the idea of Mickey Mouse. I mean, so I guess in just your own personal opinion, like say if you're gonna come up with a character, would that be something what you would do?
Uh, Not necessarily, but possibly. Yeah. I can't remember exactly how, but let me grab the picture. I think I have a picture of my Anthony character, a drawing that I did of him. But with the creation of my character, it was actually done in reverse. Um, I basically just modeled him on the computer, and then afterwards I did drawings of him.
Okay.
But when I was in college, the 3D was bless you.
Thank you.
This is uh, this is my little Anthony Ant character.
Nice.
So yeah, he's leaning on a micro. He's leaning on the edge of a magnifying glass.
Hmm.
But
Well, hopefully he doesn't get burned.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you got to
Definitely
run
hope not,
from
though.
that.
But
But but you'll notice that he's made out of spheres and like real simple geometric shapes,
Right.
and that's because that's all we could really make. Well, that's all I really knew how to make as I was learning the 3D software. It's pretty rudimentary software uh, at the at the time, but it was it could make spheres, and then just I could stretch them and make cylinders and link it all together and make the
Right.
character. And so he's more of a design so that it's function, just so that I could. He's like very close to a stick figure, you know. Uh, I mentioned before that I learned how to do flip books. Well, the majority of those were stick figures, and so I just wanted like a basic skeleton to focus on the movement with.
so did you, I guess, did you ever get to meet any famous animators?
Well, I I don't know how many animators are famous, except for maybe the Nine Old Men and Chuck Jones and uh, you know
Don Don Bluth.
Don Bluth. Yeah, no, I did not get to meet Don Bluth. Uh, I did meet when I worked at the studio. There was a friend of one of my bosses worked at Disney Animation, but I apologize, I can't remember his name right now.
Oh, darn.
Okay.
Um. Well, I mean, you know, but the thing I love, especially in the early days with animation, yeah, the Disney had the more, you know, I don't, definitely the more beautiful style. But then, look if you look at some of the like the Fleischers cartoons,
Yeah,
Popeye, Betty Boop, some of those
Superman.
cartoons, Superman, some of those were more fun. And one of my speaking of Disney, one of my favorites has been watching Ub Iwerks cartoons after he left Disney,
Uh huh.
where he made Flip the Frog and 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 it's interesting history with the ones with cartoons because they were not really meant for children.
Definitely not. And that's a very common misconception that a lot of people have. A lot of people will just automatically assume, oh, well, it's animated, it's a cartoon, therefore it's automatically for children. When, yeah, I mean, that's so not true. I mean,
Well,
look at
well,
South Park.
well,
Yeah.
Flip the Frog. This is in the 1930s. They showed those were very risque. You would think the 1930s was pretty innocent. No, watch Flip the Frog, because there's a shot where they show a full frontal and hand drawn too. And
Yeah.
so and even look at some of the Betty Boop cartoons. Those, I don't know if I would show children some of those. Maybe 10 or something like that, but not little kids. And
Mhm.
I'm sure even some of the obscure cartoons too that nobody knows about. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I
uh,
ever, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
there was some characters that were there. They were Tom and Jerry before Tom and Jerry.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's basically just like the whole thing. The fat guy and the skinny guy comedy duo. But it's kind of interesting to know that there's actually Tom and Jerry before Tom and Jerry, and it's like
Or Laurel and Hardy. It was like they're kind of like Laurel and Hardy, perhaps.
pretty much. I mean that they were essentially the anime version of that, but it's kind of funny if once you realize that it's like, man, trademark and copyright was so different back then because.
Oh, it was.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Uh,
and yeah, it especially wasn't as long back then as it is now. Well, at least
Thanks,
here,
Disney.
in the U.S.
Yeah. Um, I guess that leads into the question. We've interviewed a lot of the people who've made horror movies based on these public domain characters. What are your thoughts about that whole thing? Making horror movies out of these iconic cartoon characters.
I think it's smart.
It is.
Uh, it's very smart. When you're growing up, you're very impressionable, and you fall in love with these cute cartoon characters and all that. And it's very, early, nascent, uh, just I don't know, more vulnerable emotionally. But to take something like that's so innocent and from childhood you have all these deep memories and basically turn a dream into a nightmare. I think it's very good. It's very good
Yeah.
to tap into that like lower level psychology, which is the
Yeah.
Oh, it was.
whole idea of horror
Well,
movies.
just
It's
just imagine in 2035,
uh-huh.
2046, then we can finally get Bugs versus Mickey, right?
Yeah, and yeah, and I mean knowing that when they
And
did
then,
that, it caught people's attention. It's because of people just are not used to seeing such innocent characters like being turned completely upside down.
and then,
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
then who knows? Maybe this guy could animate it. Bugs versus Mickey, right?
Yeah,
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 possibly.
do it.
Possibly. I'm more when I kind of keep into the lighthearted side of things, I don't like horror myself personally. But yeah, I mean, it could perhaps by
Maybe.
then I'll be more in that bent.
Well,
But
maybe you could do, and some, you know, who knows, man? Walt started in Kansas City. Maybe you could just maybe do some fairy tales like what Walt did.
yeah, yeah, like I think I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do, but because I don't, ideally, I get paying clients from time to time, so I can actually like get paid to do the animation. But between those times, uh, I think I need to work on something to keep my skills up and all that. Uh, and a couple of personal projects. I think maybe animated shorts might be the way to go, and put it on YouTube or something like that. Just see if I can, you know,
Um,
generate something. But
did you
uh,
ever did you ever pitch any of your cartoons to maybe Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or anything like that, or no?
no, I haven't. I really do got to develop the story more. You know, uh, currently uh, I'm just working on kind of like I have a couple of loose story ideas, but no like script or anything like written out.
Mm-hmm.
But but I was gonna jump back to the. I just wanted to say, like, when you convert like the childhood into memory thing into a horror movie, just you think about like "Ring Around the Rosies," that song. If you take any childhood song and you like make it in a minor key, that's terrifying.
Oh,
Like
it is.
"Ring Around the Rosies."
And I don't know, and I always go to this a little bit, but I think that children's entertainment. I love you, Walt, but Disneyfying is a name for a reason. If you read the original fairy tales, like
They're hard.
how dark they are, and especially
Mhm.
speaking of Run Around the Rosie, that's about right.
What is
I
it
think
about?
yes.
I think it's about the
Ashes,
play.
ashes.
It's about the play.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Ashes, ashes. We all fall down. That's
That
pretty
makes sense
much
now.
falling down
Yeah.
and dying. I
Um,
was just thinking
so-
about that the other day. Yeah.
and then, well, even the there are some dark fairy tales out there. As somebody who I'm trying to actually, I have animation. I have some animation stuff I want to do, but I'm more of Walt, where I'm definitely more of a face of a company, not because Walt could draw, but he wasn't really the best artiste, and he knew
Which is
that.
Yeah.
which is crazy to imagine that, crazy to imagine that that would be a sentence, but
It
Well, he,
well,
he was a story artist. He was a character artist. He definitely like knew like how to tell a story and keep the audience engaged,
mhm,
and with the characters. When they were developing the stories, he would act out the characters, and
yeah,
a lot of animators loved him for that, being able to use him for reference for like, what he
mhm,
wanted. He was a very good director. And
yeah,
so he was an artist, but more of a story artist, more of a director.
right.
right, and that's why Mickey Mouse was made by two people. Walt made the personality that we all know and love, while Iwerks created Mickey Mouse. And
Hmm.
uh, Iwerks, like if you watch the early ones where was still involved with Mickey's a
Hmm.
totally different character. I mean,
It, yeah.
Yeah. Did you
uh
catch
oh,
that?
I think darn technology, you froze a little bit on us. So
That's
just
okay.
Darn it.
Yeah. Ub was very prolific. I think the story was that Walt invented uh, Mickey Mouse. Actually, they what was it? There was another character too.
Oswald.
What's that?
Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. They lost Oswald, and then
Yeah, yeah, and so and Oswald looked, a lot like Mickey Mouse, but they lost like the license to him. It was like owned by whatever
Universal.
Universal, yeah, and so they like reverted back to like this Mickey Mouse that I think Walt invented Mickey Mouse while he was in Kansas City. I'm not sure about that, but
I think
like when he
he
was
was on
shooting.
he was on a train, so he might have made it in Kansas City, but he
Possibly,
was
yeah.
on a train to New York to L.A. And then Universal ended up creating another iconic
Yeah,
cartoon character.
yeah,
Uh,
Miss.
There's my best Woody
Huh.
Woodpecker.
I only wonder who that is.
Me too. I mean, there's my best impression of that darn woodpecker. Um,
Yeah.
Uh,
so
yeah, Iwerks was very prolific. He could generate a lot of animation. He was cranking it out at an unbelievable rate.
Mhm.
And so without then the whole Steamboat Willie would have taken like 3 times longer to make or whatever.
Oh yeah. So what? Um,
Yeah, and one of the things that I find really ironic is that I heard that back when Psycho first came out, Walt actually banned Alfred Hitchcock like from going to Disneyland simply because he made Psycho. And Walt was so disgusted by that movie. But what I find really ironic now is that knowing that since Steamboat Willie became public domain, there have now been horror movies made about Mickey Mouse, and so I just find that extremely
well,
ironic.
Alfred Hitchcock. I think there was other reasons too. Like
Like
Alfred
what?
Hitchcock, he wasn't. Alfred Hitchcock was kind of not really well liked amongst some of the Hollywood circles. Like one time, Alfred Hitchcock had a very strange sense of humor. He once served a dinner party with all blue food.
Huh?
All
Thank
blue
you.
food. So there was like be a blue chicken or a blue turkey and blue mashed potatoes, and he did that simply because he thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
He
Yeah, not
what
very appetizing. Not very appetizing. And
I
that,
don't know.
it reminds me of the like kind of like shock humor, kind of like I don't know if you know Andy Kaufman is. They made a
Yeah, yeah,
movie
yeah.
Yes.
with Man on the Moon, the played by Jim Carrey. But
Yeah.
yeah, he wanted to get a rise out of people. He just like did things to see how they would react. He personally thought it was funny, but kind of very
Well,
distressing to other people.
believe me, this guy knows who Jim Carrey is.
Oh, oh yeah, I totally have never heard that name before.
And why don't we're gonna break the illusion of your green screen here, but why don't you show him?
So a friend of mine actually knows Jim Carrey, and then she actually threw me a bone and then got me connected to him.
Oh,
And
very cool. Nice.
oh yeah, that was pretty awesome. So yeah, and so yeah, and it's funny how you mentioned Men on the Moon because around that time when I first got the autograph, I just got really curious about that movie since I never saw Man on the Moon before. And yeah, Jim Carrey completely transformed himself when he did that movie. Like he changed his voice, changed his mannerisms, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard about the method acting like that he did on set. And from what I heard that it was quite the experience to work on set on that movie. And yeah, and even watching that movie, I am by no means an Andy Kaufman expert, but from what I heard, Andy Kaufman like would do some things which would only entertain him, but it wouldn't entertain other people. I don't know like how true that is, but that's
It's
just from what was in the
he
movie.
essentially I would say Andy Kaufman was kind of like the first. If YouTube was a thing when Andy Kaufman was alive, he would be he would surpass Mr. Beast with the YouTube views because just
Wow.
out of the sheer the spontaneous things he would do, like he would. And then that's the other thing too. You also kind of to wonder. I don't want to compare Andy Kaufman to these guys, but I think Andy Kaufman would essentially be kind of compared to the Paul brothers in some ways now. That guy doing this weird stuff on the internet. That's what he'd be doing. It's like I don't want to compare Andy Kaufman to those guys, but uh,
Is that Jake Paul?
yeah,
Okay, and he has a brother. I only know
Logan.
about him because of the Tyson fight.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness you only know about that. Um, but
The algorithm hasn't set him that way yet.
I guess you would rather work on a Disney cartoon versus Looney Tunes, right? Is that what we're gathering here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to like. I don't want to be like just like an imitator of another artist,
Yeah.
Fair, fair.
but at the same time, Disney car. We mentioned the quality before, and like the uh, the the beauty and the just like uh, the appeal
Mhm.
of those characters. You want to be able to like, or I want to be able to like make characters that are appealing to a wide audience.
Right.
And the scary stuff, the South Park stuff, the edgy or whatever isn't necessarily. I mean, it can be fairly universal, but I think you get like a more. I, I would want like a more universal kind of audience, but it's always nice to make something that that stands out as well. And so, I think it's probably best to, I don't know, uh, I want it to be unique, but also universal. And I think good art does that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, I don't want it to be like formulaic or just an imitation of something else. I
Right.
always, I always like I mean, I always like the manga. Is it manga or manga? Manga. The
Yeah.
manga, like that kind of Super Mario Brothers box art
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
style, uh, which is very, very Disney, very Pixar kind of
Mhm.
type of stuff. But at the same time, uh, I don't know. There's a wide range. There's infinite possibilities for different aesthetics, and I'd like it to have kind of a unique
Mhm.
feel, but also be universal.
Uh, yeah.
Right.
I mean,
And I mean, ultimately, if you're just going to be intimidating someone else, well, then what's the point? And I mean, ultimately, since it is something that you are doing, I mean, it really truly does make more sense, like to make it your own.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting if you look at like the characters like The Simpsons, which when they first came out, they were drawn a lot more roughly. They weren't honed in as much as they are now, and they kind of like over the years, like especially the early seasons, uh, the characters evolved to be kind of a little bit more rounded, a little bit more consistent, and they started to like do design them to make them just like more appealing. But initially they were definitely you know unique. You know,
mhm.
no characters like really look like the Simpsons characters, and even after they evolved, they they still look unique. Although they've kind of, like I said, like rounded out the corners and like made it a little bit more
Yeah.
appealing, and used like certain aesthetics and design principles that just like make it more universal. And so I don't know, maybe that would be the path to go down. Is just like try to be stand out, but
Yeah,
Mhm.
and a matter of fact, I believe at one point it wasn't even called The Simpsons. It was like called the Tracy Ullman Show, I believe.
it
That
was
was the
called the Simpsons was a short uh, clip or like the show was called Tracy Ullman. It was a live action show, and the Simpsons was this kind of an episode that they would play like in the middle of the show, just
it
kind of like
was
it's just like 5 minute short. You know, I think usually what they would do is like every segment of the Tracy Ullman episode near the ender of it, they would play like 1 or 2 minute, 1 or 2 minutes clip of the Simpsons episode, and so like it it would be like 2 or 3 clips over the course of the show that they would get back to the Simpsons and you know tell the story of that week over the course of 3 or 4 you know
yeah.
short.
Well, Tracy Ullman. It was like a it was
Sketch
a
comedy.
variety, it was a variety show,
Yeah, and
and
it's like a sketch.
sort of like it was meant to be Fox's SNL. sort
Yeah,
of, and
yeah, it's like that variety show, like a sketch comedy show where they would do different bits, and basically The Simpsons was kind of like one of their skits, you know.
yeah, and but I mean, if you look at the, I'm gonna, but then you even look at the evolution of Homer. They they even even the Dan Canzanello, or however you say his last name, changed his voice. The early voice is much more of a Walter Matthau impression.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny that you mentioned that because I actually was about to comment on that, and so it's basically like as if you read my mind. But yeah, Homer, like even his physical design was different. It's like the overall idea was there, but it wasn't quite refined, and even his voice sounded different. And yeah, and a lot of people who I've met who like after getting used to like what the Simpsons is like now, when they go back and rewatch, well, I shouldn't say rewatch, like when they go back and watch like those older episodes from the Tracy Ullman show, they all say the same thing a lot like that. They all say, wow, the characters look different, they sound different. It's almost like as if they're not used to, well, I mean, I do get it. They're not used to it. They're more used to like the modern day Simpsons, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like it really shows like just how far the Simpsons have come. And I mean, even the same thing can be said about Beavis and Butthead too. Like even watching the older episodes of that, like say Frog Baseball and everything else, and even Mike Judge himself, like has even said that yeah, the animation like was pretty rough, but hey, I mean you got to start somewhere.
You got to
Well,
start somewhere. Yep.
well, I'm one of the very few. I think with Beavis and Butthead, like that rough animation though, it kind of adds to it though a little bit,
Sure. For
because
sure. Yeah, there's a certain charm and quality to, yeah, certain feel to it that, the
uh,
homemade, just like homemade,
Yeah,
well,
doodle,
well,
more like a doodle than a,
well,
fine art or whatever.
to think Mike Judge, what he went to like college for like, um,
physics.
yeah, yes, and then he ended up being an animator. I mean, so, um, well, so
And I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah, so it's just like, and that's it's like, wow, went to college for physics and then went into animation, but I guess there is probably more physics than we think in animation, I would assume. So,
Yeah,
Yeah, my dad is a physics teacher. My mom is well, she wasn't a professional artist, but she was definitely artistic. She could draw and paint for sure. My grandmother actually was a stop motion animator, like not professionally, but she would tinker around with the doing frame by frame, stop, making real objects move around in stop
any,
motion. But
anything anything famous she ever did, or not really, or like maybe that got more recognition, I guess, or
oh no, it's she tinkered around with it like at home.
oh,
She wasn't professional, but
well,
like,
you need to find those and upload them on your website or something, right?
oh yeah.
yeah, they're still on 8 millimeter, I think. Yeah, I
Well,
think yeah, I have those, but um, yeah, I did pretty good in physics actually, and you're right. Yeah, it is used quite a bit. Kinematics is like the study of the way things move, and that's a branch of physics. And so when a ball bounces, to animate it accurately or even stylistically, you want it to feel like a
well,
bouncing ball, then it
well,
moves in a particular way, and physics is behind that. Yeah.
well, even
Yeah,
you have to time it to, time certain cartoons to music, and
Uh huh. Yeah. Like that's why I like animation. That's it's kind of it has so many different
Mhm.
media that are joined together, and
Right.
so you can it's more accessible from more uh, more areas, like Mike Judge came in at with physics. Walt Disney came at it with good storytelling. Ub Iwerks, he was incredibly artistic or proficient drawer, draftsman.
Mhm.
Musicians. There's and timing. You is definitely timing is one of the principles of animation, and you get
Mhm.
into music, and so it's yeah, definitely a lot of fields kind of coming
Oh,
together.
Yeah.
yeah.
And especially considering that my senior year of high school, I actually remember that I took an animation class. And at that time, I had zero understanding of physics. And yeah, and trying to animate a character and make them move in a fluent way,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. I mean, it's a lot harder than people realize. And I will not forget that we had a project where we had to make our characters talk, and I recorded the voice myself because it was just easier to do it that way. And I will never forget like just how off that my character looked. Like their mouth, the way how they talk, it's definitely not in a way how a normal person would talk. Like they would talk like this,
Oh no,
Well,
Godzilla!
like basically as if it was like Jim Carrey, doing it, which is ironic because we mentioned Jim Carrey earlier. And I will never forget like when everybody in my class watched it, everybody like was just in laughter, like by just how awkwardly the character walked, just and with just how awkwardly that he talked. And matter of fact, I believe that I uploaded it to my YouTube channel, and so if you want to see the cringe fest, you can go right ahead.
um,
Please send the link or post the link.
so we, I mean, and well, even look at the Fleischers. I mean, where they like Max was the animator. I can't think of the other guy's name right now. But the other Fleischer was more the technician guy, and he built all the sets. And then they shot it live action a lot of times, and then they would have animate like Popeye onto the. It was very extravagant for back then, and that's one of the reasons why the Fleischers were like one of the true, at least at that time, rivals to Disney, and then
Mm-hmm.
later became Looney Tunes. But which is funny because that's one thing I wanted to even say with this episode. People don't realize that a lot of the great artists that we all know and love came from Kansas City.
Oh
Walt
yeah.
Disney, Fritz Freleng, um, the creator of the Red Rider. You know, I
Oh,
mean,
that's
a,
interesting.
a lot of them came from Kansas City under Walt Disney originally with the Laugh-O-Gram Studios.
That's ironic.
And, I mean, Looney Tunes, keep in mind here, originally the name of Walt's company was Laugh-O-Gram.
Mm-hmm.
So Looney Tunes, you know what I mean?
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
So,
Merry Melodies was
yes.
that
And
a Disney one?
that was well that was that a lot of they did that back in the day. It was Merry Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, Disney and Silly Symphonies, MGM did Happy Harmonies.
Yeah. Yep.
you
Yep.
know to kind of just all the way combine it with combine the music with
Yeah.
you
They
know,
the animate that was in the early days when film didn't even have sound yet.
Yep.
They were transitioning from having somebody sit down and play an actual piano, in front of a movie screen. They were transitioning from that to talkies and movies with sound
Yep.
built in, and animation was primed to be able to do that synchronization perfectly.
oh yeah.
And
um
so that's why those were
the,
pretty popular, and that's they all did that, to kind of tap into
well,
that.
obviously, you're part of kind of, I would assume, that last generation of animators that actually know hand drawn and CGI
The what?
animation.
The what
Part of
generation?
Yeah, you're part of that last generation where you
Uh-huh.
guys hand drawn animation and CGI animation because
Yeah.
now they're just kind of teaching CGI animation and a lot of the times, and so that's one of the reasons why it's like I think that even brings up to the next point. I mean, there's the great documentary Pencils versus Pixels,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. Yeah, it's
you know
pretty interesting. Like they're like one, there's some artists that were able to transition from hand drawn to computer graphics, and other ones that just couldn't. I think, but uh, it, it's. I think there's always going to be just like the aspect of the way things move, and then knowledge of the timing and easing in and easing out, different uh, ways that things move, that I don't know, I imagine most of the artists were able to kind of transition, and I'd actually like to do, I think one of the stories I want to develop is it would actually be kind of like a hybrid. I always think that's kind of neat when you can do a hybrid of the two
I
mediums.
love those. I love those hybrid early 2000s films where they're kind of trying to combine it a little bit.
Like you are you talking about like in the Little Mermaid they did like the
Well,
boat was computer generated, but they hand drew. I think they hand drew
yeah.
over
Well,
computer.
a lot of the stuff in the Disney Renaissance, but like I'm talking more like Treasure Planet or something, or where a lot of it was hand drawn, but a lot of it was CGI animation, and or even Atlantis. That one's a fun one. So
Yeah, and even in The Lion King, uh, during that scene with the wildebeest stampede, and I know this because I took animation, was that all the wildebeest actually were CGI, but just the thing
Mhm.
is, they just made them look like they were in 2D animation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how they did that. Whether it to me, it looks like somebody might have traced over them, like rotoscoped over them, like they were animated in CG first, and then they did the ink and paint with just by hand. Is my feeling. I'm not 100% sure about that, but they don't look like they have that very. They have a super crisp edge that just like perfectly follows the character like CG would. It looks like the motion of them and the form of them was rendered first with the computer, because that's very accurate. But uh, who knows? They might have found a way to make it all
um,
just CG
you know
generated, even the
the
ink
one
and
thing
paint.
that the one thing that though really sucks that that I was gonna say though with getting back to Popeye, he was actually there was actually a pitch for a Popeye new movie, and I think it was going to be made by Universal, but guess what movie they decided to do instead?
What?
The Emoji
Garfield?
Movie. The Emoji
What?
Movie.
Sorry.
The Emoji Movie.
Oh, the Emoji Movie. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
so
I think there's a
they
clip of
picked Popeye over Emoji. So a movie where they paid Patrick Stewart to play
Poop.
shit.
That is just really funny. Like knowing that they paid a high profile actor to voice poop.
Well, I just want to know, like, how much did they pay him to do that? Like, how much do you get paid to play poop? You
I
know?
mean, oh yeah, and now people can say what they want about the Emoji Movie, but the one scene that was funny is when the poop emoji and his kid, the kid poop emoji after they got done using the bathroom, then it said, I believe it was the child who asked, "Should I wash my hands?" And then the dad poop poop emoji said no.
Um, so, what? So let's see. Is there a? But I actually have. I see his work a lot here in Kansas City. Because he's done a lot of the local, you know, advertisements on. Here I am displaying my main source of news, and usually it usually plays on Fox. So but and I always liked the little getting back to the price choppers. I always liked them. That was like really good. Did you come up with that, or did Price Chopper?
I think Price Chopper. I'm not sure exactly what happened before it got to us, but the marketing agency came to us with basically like photoshopped 2D images of these characters they wanted to develop, and they weren't like fully fleshed out, but they basically had the big eyes and the big teeth. And they were furry models, furry.
They, for those who don't know, they kind of look like dust mites, sort of. I guess
Yeah.
I guess the best way to describe them, or like a I guess maybe like a 2D, like a CGI like a CGI Muppet monster, sort of. I guess I don't know how to really describe them, but
Would I be able to bring up a screenshot during this?
yeah, Eric can share it.
I can share it. Yeah.
Let me queue up. I think I have them.
Now, hopefully, we don't get a copyright claim from because the guy is right here. For sure.
I think it'll be years before they do. Yeah. So I have I don't know. Is my screen currently sharing or?
No, it's just mice on my end. Here, maybe if you send it to, maybe send whatever it is you want to send to my email, and I can maybe share it that way.
Okay. Well, on my screen, I have an option to present. Would that be it? Could I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do that, yeah.
So, but no, so
here's what they look like. Do you see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold up. I'm gonna back to that. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you mind if I play this? It's just 5
Sure.
seconds.
Sure.
Yeah,
no
this
problem.
always makes me laugh whenever just the 18th and Vine district is a part of town in Kansas City that's known for blues and jazz and stuff. And so this was just kind of a short little funny little animation that the characters that I got to do.
Nice.
That's all. I'm done sharing.
There you go.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
That's what they look like.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been told that fur is really hard to animate, and since I could see that the characters and that had fur, was that hard to animate?
Yeah. Well, the hair was harder to develop, because it had to be shorter and longer, and it had to be combed, like actually, like so that by default when you put hair on an object, all the hairs just stick straight out, so they look like they were like constantly being electrocuted or something like that. So you had to like groom them and comb the hair so that it shaped. And do that in 3D is pretty difficult. You only have like so many guide hairs is what they would call them, but it was like one out of every 100 hairs was a guide, and so it looked like really just like a very thin haired creature with just like a few strands sticking out, when you would go into the grooming mode or whatever, so you could like shape these hairs. But then you would have to like render it out to see what the result of it was. So that was a very painstaking process. And then once they were done, being groomed and the look of them all fleshed out, I would try to make the hair like actually be affected by their motion, like so that there was a little bit of drag to the hair that would like stay behind. Like if you imagine like someone with very long hair, if they come to a stop first, their hair would drag behind, or have a little bit of follow through, so like they stop first and then the hair still moves. And so I try to add a little bit of that dynamic effect to it. And that would often crash the computer. That would also often make the hair like actually go through their skull, which didn't look right. And so that I had to tone down quite a bit, in order to make it, just to avoid those technical difficulties. And so there could have been a lot more challenges, but mostly the challenge was just creating the hair in the first place and grooming it right. And then on the motion end of it, I just like had a little bit of that effect, but way toned down, so that we weren't doing anything like that movie, the Disney movie with the girl with the long hair. They were doing all kinds of stuff. They developed all kinds of special tools for that kind of stuff.
The interesting thing here, I found, Don Bluth, has actually said this, that he could do an animated movie or hand drawn for $35 million.
Uh-huh.
And, it's amazing that as popular as Don Bluth is, he can't even find people that want to invest money into hand drawn animation,
Yeah.
And I feel like, maybe it's because there hasn't been a 2D hand-drawn animated movie, as far as I'm aware, since Winnie the Pooh in 2011, as far as I can remember. And maybe it's because that most people like just want to do 3D animation. Maybe it's because it's just more convenient. But regardless, as a live action remakes of all the Disney movies prove, like it or not, nostalgia definitely does sell. And people definitely do have that factor, like for 2D animation. So my thing that as long as they market it right, I think that there definitely could be a market like for 2D animation.
And
there could be a renaissance or a comeback for it.
And from if the rumors are true, he wants to make a Dragon Slayer movie.
Oh, that would be very cool. The animation in that video game is great.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Great animation.
And he wants to get. I heard. I don't know how true this is. Last I heard, I understand he's a big name and everything, and big names sell. But like, they want to get Ryan Reynolds as Dirk, which I'm like,
that'd be good. I can see that working.
I can kind of see it. I think I think I would get that one guy, Glenn Powell, who was in. He was in Top Gun Maverick. He was in the new Twisters.
Yeah.
Well, him, he kind of looks like him, but
yeah.
Ideally, what you would want would be who would be perfect for it. Would be a younger Jim Carrey. He would nail it.
Hey, Eric. Speaking of Jim Carrey, people have called you the next Jim Carrey. You could play Dirk.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the most common thing that people told me throughout my entire life. People have told me throughout my entire life, you remind me of Jim Carrey. It's like, I swear, that is the most common thing people have told me throughout my entire life. And what I find really funny, one day my senior year of high school, I was at a football game, hanging out with a friend of mine. We met up with some of her friends, and then one day, one of her friends was like, "You look like that famous comedian." I was like, "Who?" And then she was like, "I can't remember his name." I was naming all these comedians like Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, and she was like, no, no, no. And then finally I said Jim Carrey, and then she was like, yes, yes, yes. And then I was like, okay, this will be a moment like for me to show off my Jim Carrey impression. I'll never forget how speechless that they were afterwards. Like, you should have seen the look on their faces.
Well, Eric, now you got to do it.
Sure. Want me to do my Jim Carrey impression? All right, fine. I'll do it for you. Because it's rather.
So,
Yeah.
but the question, okay, the question is though, then who do you get to play Daphne, Princess Daphne? Then because I mean, Princess Daphne. Let's face it. Is probably next to Jessica Rabbit, probably one of the definitely the most good-looking animated characters, right? So, who do you get to play Princess Daphne, Eric?
Huh.
I know who he's going to say.
There's a lot of. Oh, I think I know of one. Ty here is not going to be surprised, but I think I would go with I think I would go with Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh yeah.
Ty's not going to be surprised that I said that.
I'm trying to think of who, like, just looks wise, who might look the most like her. But
well, I mean,
Scarlett Johansson,
Kate Upton,
Megan Fox.
But Princess, there's a question for you. What Prince? We'll ask Brian this question. Let's see, Princess Daphne versus Jessica Rabbit.
Princess who?
Daphne.
Oh, what do you mean versus? Like in a fight? Like a physical fight, or just like or
good look,
just
good look as it looks.
Well, I think Daphne, her proportions are a lot more believable.
Well, yes, considering what they based it on.
Yeah.
According to Don Bluth, they looked at Gary Goldman's Playboys.
Yeah, but they wait for the princess.
Yes.
For Princess Daphne. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's good to know.
Now you do, and honestly, I didn't know that either. So you learn something new every day.
Yeah. Well, it's a standard thing. It's basically rotoscoping. Even Snow White was rotoscoped.
Well, I mean that's the interesting thing is I mean look at Ralph Bakski's some of his rotoscoping. Every animator has their own style. And I guess if someone asked your style, how would you describe it?
I don't know yet. I think I'm trying to. I'd like to ultimately try to do, like I said, the manga kind of look, animated.
Are you maybe? Yeah, maybe you'll. Who knows? So, eventually, do you want it then? Maybe Brian Lynas world or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. I'm kind of sad about what it's like after Walt Disney passed. What's become of his company, and I think he'd probably be rolling over in his grave with some of the stuff that they put his name on, and so that always kind of bothers me. It's like, I don't know, would it be like dissolve the company when I pass away, or change the name or something?
Well,
yeah, and people even said the same thing, like after Dr. Seuss passed away, like when they made the live action Cat in the Hat. I mean, even the widow of Dr. Seuss, I mean, people can have their own opinions, but the widow of Dr. Seuss did not like the live action Cat in the Hat. So much so, that's the reason why that we haven't gotten any more live action Dr. Seuss movies. It was because she was one of the words that she said, from what I understood, was that she was saying, yeah, Dr. Seuss would be rolling in his grave, like with a lot of like the sexual humor that they had in that movie, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they did okay with the Grinch, though, didn't they? The Grinch was okay. I
Yeah.
don't. You
Well,
know, she had as much of a problem with that.
I don't think she did she? From what I've heard.
No, no, yeah. From what I heard, no, she didn't have a problem with it. I mean, yes, the Grinch did have some sexual humor, but I felt like it was a lot more subtle about it. But
Well,
in The Cat in the Hat, though, I mean, there actually is a scene like where he says "dirty hoe." It's like yes, like I'm not gonna lie, is that funny? Yeah, but I can understand why Dr. Seuss's widow thought, okay, that's too far.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, and even
Yeah. I
even
think.
even Walt, he did agree that you need to have that subtle humor for adults, but like once where kids aren't going to understand it, like and also you don't really want kids repeating some certain
Dirty
phrases,
hoe.
and
No, 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 no.
and there's it's just that great fine line, and one of the things, I actually did, for people, I've talked about it quite a bit. I'm not really meaning to, but I actually did apply to be chairman of the Walt Disney Company uh,
Okay.
at 27. When I would, if I for people in the for people here, I I get I here I am. I actually got votes to be chairman because I campaigned myself, and because I didn't like the way Bob Iger was running the company. And
Oh, when did you do this? What year was
2020,
it?
2020,
2020? Yeah. You got
2020.
votes. That's good.
I did, and because I wasn't happy with the way that Bob was running the company, and my thing was to focus back on the animation and everything, and yeah, I mean, because I think that Walt, you know, if Walt saw the stuff with animation right now, he would go back into it, because, and even because I just say at this point, I don't know what you do. I mean, Michael Eisner, didn't do that bad of a job, really, so
Hmm.
starting the
Yeah.
Disney Renaissance and everything.
Yeah, and I mean, knowing that he started the Renaissance, and I mean, really, I think a lot of people will agree with this assessment. Like, the Renaissance is one of the things that helped get Disney as to where they are at now.
Yeah,
Yep.
Well, like if it wasn't for Lion King, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and all those classics, I mean,
Yeah.
I really truly don't feel like that Disney would be where they're at now.
Yeah. Oh, and those did come out after Disney passed for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, whether you want to keep your name on something. You never know what could happen, after you pass away. Go for better or worse,
well, it's like you even have to. You could. It's like that's the thing is, do you put when starting a company, do you put your name on your company, or do you go like Universal, and just it's Universal?
Yeah.
Would Carl Lemley be happy with Universal now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and even if you do that, your your association with it still could carry on, after
Yeah.
you pass away.
Oh yeah,
But I guess people know that Disney passed away. I think in 1975 or something like that.
66.
Was it
Actually,
66?
actually, yeah, it's coming up here shortly. December.
Almost 75. That's the
December.
year I was born in 75, so that's why I
Oh,
think it's that year. But anyway,
it's December 15th.
oh,
which
it's when
is
he
the
passed.
day which is the day after my birthday.
15th.
Yeah.
Right.
But, yeah, I think it's good to have a short name for people to type it in the website. But that's what links are for, right? You're going to put my
Yeah.
Right.
link to my website.
Well, so I guess Bierthaler's out because that's not a short name.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the most common things that I get is like that. A lot of people don't know how to pronounce my last name, and so
Hey, hold on here, guys.
okay, but yeah, somebody is popular. But
Yep.
yeah, and so anyways, if you had to pick one animated movie, what would you say would be your absolute favorite an- animated movie?
Oh gosh, can I get two?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Lion King and The Incredibles, the first Incredibles.
Yeah, and honestly, both of those are fantastic choices. And yeah, and I actually remember going to see The Incredibles in theaters with my family back in theaters when it came out. And of course, I also remember seeing part two in theaters too. And yeah, and I remember joking with my friends saying, "So is this going to take them yet like another 10 plus years like for us to get the third movie now?"
Yeah, well, I heard that they are working on it. They are starting development, I guess.
Yeah, and but yeah, in your own opinion, what were your thoughts on part two?
Uh, I was kind of bored. I was kind of let down. Uh, it's I don't know if they could have. I don't know what they could have. I mean, I'm not an expert storyteller myself,
Right.
but the first one had it. I read an article that said it was very, uh, you know, similar to the first one, except they just reversed the role of the father and the mother to where she was the one that was doing the uh, all the adventure stuff, and he was trying to hold down the fort or whatever. But um, I think it could. I think it could use some work. The first one, had a good original story, and really I like the animation in it as well in the first Incredibles because they were doing like really, I don't know, just the way that they moved. I think was really well handled. Interestingly, I rewatched some parts of the original Toy Story, and I'm like, man, I know it was the first fully computer generated film, but some of the motion in that movie is kind of janky.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
I'm
and
sure, I'm sure a lot of it was intentional because, like, the way how would a toy move or
Yeah.
whatever, and some of it does look really good, but there is some parts, some animations, some moves on that movie that look just like a little janky. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
they were
Well,
still learning back then. They were still
well,
learning how to
kind
do
of.
it, but by the time they made the Incredibles, they had a lot of that stuff worked out. Now,
Well,
success of Toy Story, just want to say, like when Buzz turns Spanish to Spanish mode and was a Toy Story 3.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
two.
I think it's like in the credits, he does a dance, and just the way that he moves is like probably pinnacle animation right there.
Right. Well, the real funny thing about that, though, with Toy Story, there a lot of people don't realize that my friend, I mean, trying to contact him now is like, I lost his phone number. That was like 5 phones ago. But he discovered that there's a scene in Toy Story where they actually swear.
There is?
Yes,
The original?
the original. They're throwing a. It's where they're throwing the lights, and you hear, I believe it's Ham, sit there. He sits there. He drops an F-bomb.
Wow. I mean, they must have did that in a really subtle way, and I won't be surprised is if for the Disney Plus version, I wouldn't be surprised if they censored that.
I don't know. It's like a quick and you miss it, and he was like the only one that discovered this that I saw, and I'm like, well, I know he recorded it once on his phone, and I wish he would have sent me that. I wish I still had his information, because then it's like, then you upload that to your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because but I know people have said that even Walt had an interesting sense of humor, because I guess during a Disney Christmas party, there was some animator took the time to animate. It's the stuff of legend that they actually took the time to animate a little special tape of Mickey and Minnie. And Walt just sit there and said, "Burn this." But like, people who knew Walt said he did kind of find it a little funny, the fact that somebody took the time to animate that.
Well, that's interesting. I never knew that either. But yeah, I mean, going back to Toy Story, there is a brief moment in Toy Story 1 where I actually believe Lotso from Toy Story 3 is actually in it. But it's just that, it's because it was from quite some time before Toy Story 3. The fur on Lotso definitely isn't as refined. And so, and yeah, and I mean, it really shows just how far animation has come ever since, when they made that first movie. And yeah.
So
Yeah.
was the dream for you always then to work at Kansas City, or what made you just want I mean, stay in Kansas City, or did you ever apply to
Oh
the
yeah,
local?
I did apply to Pixar when I was out of college. With and it was right around the time that they were already in production and getting ready to release A Bug's Life. Whenever I applied to there, I was like, oh, I was working on Anthony Ant. They'll like this, So I sent them my college reel, with that on there. They turned me down. They turned me down,
Well,
and that's okay, because I went on to shortly thereafter, have a long career at a smaller studio where I got to do, probably a lot more than I would have been able to do at a bigger studio. So at the smaller studio, I got to be the lead character animator.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of that, though, where is a Bug's Life sequel? I want a Bug's Life sequel.
Yeah, where is it?
Yeah, I'm actually really, really surprised that I believe that we've gone sequels to every single one of Pixar's movies except Wall-E, Bug's Life. And I think that there's some others I might be missing.
Well, what would you do? What Bug's Life you could do a lot with, but what could you do with the sequel to Wall-E?
I'm sure that they could come up with something if they find a creative enough writer. But yeah, I'm really surprised that I'm also surprised that even on Disney Plus they haven't done any spin-off show or anything. And I even believe at Disneyland or California Adventure they used to have a Bugs Life show. I believe that they got rid of that too.
I think it's still there, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's in the Tree of Life at Animal Kingdom. I know. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But so so if they make a sequel to Bug's Life, I think what we've established is that Anthony Ant needs to be in it, right?
Yeah, Definitely, yeah.
So would Anthony Ant? What would he be? Would he be like a villain, or would he be a good ant? You know.
I think he'd be a good ant. He's an inventor, but their character
So so he's
that
like,
they
wait.
had.
So I guess he could be like an apprentice to Flick, right?
Yeah, I think Flick was an inventor also, and I can't
Yeah.
remember whether or not I
Yeah.
developed that independently as a character trait. And I, the reason I wanted him to be an inventor is because I had an idea for a short story that would be like Anthony Ant versus the Ant Eater,
Huh.
and it would be kind of a David versus Goliath kind of story, you know.
Mm.
But the ants, this Anthony Ant only has 2 arms and 2 legs, you know, and the story behind that is that the creatures evolved, the ants evolved to get rid of the second pair of arms, and uh, so the invention that Anthony Ant comes up with in order to fight the large creature is or the anteater is like that extra pair of arms, but they're like robotic arms that he straps around his waist, and those end up breaking, and so he has to basically use his headband to you know swing a rope and or swing like a slingshot like David versus Goliath. It's kind of like use the force, Luke kind of story
Right.
trope. It's like, yeah, you can try to rely on all this technology and the invention, but it really just comes down to like a little slingshot type of story. But that's the whole reason I wanted him to be an inventor. Just kind of like, I don't know, I thought that would be
Yeah.
cool for him.
So
Strap an extra pair of robotic arms.
so maybe that's all I think. It's like this is like Flick's apprentice or something because he's an inventor, and then I don't I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
okay. They rejected me. I don't want him to be a sub character in a bigger character movie.
Passing of the torch, right?
What's that?
A passing of the torch story, right? Because
Yeah,
it's been so many years.
it would have to be a movie like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where their characters from different companies all
You know,
appear.
you know,
You know.
that's one thing. That's a story idea I had for animated project. Okay, so the
Uh-huh.
Alice comics that Disney made, actually in Kansas City, are public domain. So in that show, it was a little girl who goes into a animated world. See, I had the idea to make it like Roger Rabbit, but make the girl older. Like this is
Uh-huh.
her, and when she's an actual full grown woman, and so you could still do stuff with that. But then you could still use the characters that were in the animated show, but you could also use all public domain animated cartoons. And I'm sorry, folks, for my camera being off. I'm waiting for someone right now. So
That's okay.
yeah, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know if we want. I don't know if we want to go full Joe Rogan or if we don't want to take too much of Brian's time. So
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, I do want to respect his time. But yeah. So, anyways, is there anything upcoming for you that you would want the audience to be aware of?
Nothing major. I'm just here doing my freelance thing. I get a gig every couple of months, usually on average, but it's been kind of a dry spell lately. So I'm just kind of hoping for work and working on developing like my personal stories, like maybe work more on my Anthony Ant and all that. But that'll be years down the road. Perhaps when it gets closer to that, if you're still doing this thing, we could have another interview session then.
Oh yeah,
we'd love to have you.
Honor.
All right,
Very well.
cool.
Thank you all for having me on.
But yeah,
All right,
certainly.
bye-bye.
And we certainly do appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
All right.
Uh,
All right.
you as
Bye-bye.
well. All right. Have a good one.
See
You
ya.
as well.